So, with all of that done, let's jump into the news. And I think we should start in Seattle because, as we know, the Club World Cup is going to come relatively soon. I will be at two of the games, which should be really, really fun. One of them, I'm going to get to see LAFC play. They're playing some, oh, I don't know. I forget who they're playing. Very small team out of England. Chell Ocean? Shell Ocean? Something like that.
Wow, you're hilarious. Chill Ocean, that's a new one.
Yeah, isn't it? I thought that was clever. And I'll also get to see Bayern play Benfica. So should be really fun. However, those teams are all going to pay their players really, really well. But as we've already covered, MLS players are getting a very unfair share of their Club World Cup prize money. I believe the MLSPA put out a graphic today that said basically they're getting 1% of everything that's coming in. Not great, right? Now, it appears that MLS players and the MLSPA have attempted to make contact with the league over this issue, and there was no movement made for weeks. With 2 weeks to go before the tournament kicks off, still no resolution. So to raise awareness, the Sounders wore T-shirts with the phrase "Club World Cash Grab" on the front, with the logo of the Monopoly man wearing an MLS hat running away with a bag of FIFA money, which is hilariously ironic because if anybody looks at that and remembers maybe 12 months ago, this was the same logo that was used when Don Garber pulled out of the US Open Cup for Leagues Cup, and everybody was like, Don Garber money grab. Well, now MLS is switching it over on FIFA, which I think is hilarious. But MLSPA posted a statement online backing the Sounders players, citing, of course, the massive workload, the schedule congestion, but as well as the fact that the league consistently asks the Players Association to work outside of the CBA if it's in the best interest of the league and the players combined, right? Messi deal comes to mind instantly, right? While many have voiced support for these players, the anti-MLS and the anti-Club World Cup crowd have come out in full voice, as they always do when something like this happens, calling out the players for speaking out against this, but not speaking out against the Leagues Cup cash grab, or as well as only complaining about things when it impacts themselves, right? Like they don't come out and complain that there's no pro rel, but they'll complain about the Club World Cup. So the question for you, Connor, are the Sounders being selfish, or is this a fair gripe?
No, I think this is definitely fair. I mean, we're talking about completely different levels of money between US Open Cup and the Club World Cup. I mean, the amount of money that's being thrown around for this Club World Cup is insane. I mean, the potential bonuses that some of these players could get could genuinely be life-changing for them,
Mhm.
especially considering like how like finicky a player's career can be. Like you could step on the field tomorrow and your career is over. All it takes is one weird injury and it's done. Sure, maybe you come back on the field and you start to play again, but you may never be the same player that you once were ever again.
Well,
So
and the
like
Sounders, the
being,
Sounders know that better than anybody with Steve Zakuani, right? Steve
yeah,
Zakuani was a rising MLS midfielder, young player of the year, on pace for rookie of the year, huge season, and had his leg snapped in half, and he was never the same, right? So Sounders know that better than anybody.
and that's why I will never be upset with players trying to make the most of their money while they're still healthy and still in the prime of their careers, because you just never know when it's going to end. So maximize it while you can, and I'm definitely in support of that. And I hold on, sorry, I was about to jump into probably a topic that's later on your list, so I'm going to control myself and not do that. So I'll just end it there. I'll keep it short, keep it sweet. Yeah, I think that they're valid for their frustrations here.
Good man, good man. I just found that graphic, by the way, from the PA. The minimum prize distribution, which is basically all that MLS is going to get, let's be real. Uh, Only 10% of that prize distribution is going to the players. If for whatever reason the Sounders go all the way to the final and win the damn thing, they get 1% of that payout. Let's be not going to happen, right? But 10% out of a possible, 100, not good enough. Which fair. My other question, one that I just kind of thought of on the spot here. How do you feel about the way they went about it with the T-shirt and the cash grab phrase and along those lines? Could they have gone about it a different way and been more impactful? Like, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it accomplished its goal. I mean, we're sitting here talking about it. We're not the only ones sitting here talking about it. It got plenty of attention, and that was the goal. You want to get eyes on it. You want to get people talking about it. You want to get the media talking about it. Is the more people are aware of it, the more I think people are going to be sympathetic for the Seattle players because it's, it's your rich millionaire billionaires versus your players that are out there actually earning you the money. I didn't realize that the front office and the owners were out there on the field, winning CONCACAF Champions Cup and qualifying you for this competition versus, Stefan Fry and Yeimar Gomez Andrade. So yeah, I absolutely think that I think their goal was accomplished. So I can't really say that they what they did was the wrong way to go about it. At least it feel like okay, let me take a step back. It's not accomplished until they get a better share of the money.
Mhm.
But I think their short-term goal of getting more people to talk about it and getting more eyes on it and getting more like discussion going about it, I think that's worked.
Yeah, I think it's really well put. And I ask you that because after that game, the owner, Adrian, and I'm going to butcher this name, Hanauer, I believe is the name of it. Adrian Hanauer, yes. Um, Basically went down to the Seattle locker room and just lambasted. Is that the correct word here? Lambasted? I
It's a
think
nice
so.
word.
It's a great word. It's an SAT word for our younger listeners. Basically dug into him and said, unacceptable, can't believe you did that, blah, 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 blah. And then after that, the Sounders basically they came together as a group. It was rolled on and Fry in the front with players behind them kind of in solidarity making this announcement. And Stephen Fry basically came out and was like, listen, we aren't asking for the money that Man City or Chelsea are going to get. We're not asking for PSG money because we know we're not as big as them. We're not the draw, right? The draw to this tournament is not us. What we're asking for is for fair payment. And I thought that was really really telling. Could the t-shirt showing been different, with the only thing that stands out to me is the logo, right? Because the logo feels basically copy and pasted from what was used to go against MLS to begin with. So I think that might be the only thing I would have changed about that because it is a little bit ironic, right? But the common theme that you're going to see in this episode that we're going to talk about is this anti-MLS crowd who are going to just try and find negatives in anything that involves MLS, right? And this is one of the prime examples of it. Because if you put this in any other situation where people were being fed a hugely disproportionate amount of money for anything, and they said we're going to try and fight for to get more, you back those people, no questions asked, right? Let's rewind to the MLS ref strike last year, right? Every single one of us like, yep, absolutely. Go fight for your money, right? You deserve it. This is what you own. Now, because it's an MLS team and MLS players, you've got half the Twitter being like, "Oh no, they should just eat it because you signed a CBA and this is what it gets, and you didn't talk out about Leagues Cup, so this is karma." Blah 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 blah. That's insane, right? That's absolutely bonkers to me. But basically, going back to what Stephen Fry was saying, he basically summarized it by saying, "We signed this CBA not knowing how much money was going to be thrown our way in the next 3 years. And we shouldn't be punished for not being able to predict the future." And I think that is bang on exactly how I felt when I was thinking about this. If 4 years ago they knew they were going to win the champ, and by the way, they signed this in 2021. So if they knew that in 2023 they were going to win the Champions League, they were going to qualify for an extended Club World Cup that was going to pay them $10 million to each team minimum, and then they were going to say, "Oh yeah, we'll sign that. We'll still be capped at $1 million." Yeah, that's on them. But being that this is unprecedented as a situation in and of itself, it deserves to be handled differently, right? I don't think you should punish them for not being able to predict the future. That's silly.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're like a lot of the quotes you're sharing from the players talking is just so it just feels very human. It just feels
Mhm.
very like, they're not asking for that much. They're just asking for their fair share. And it's like I just can't wrap my head around. It's like how as a fellow like human can you just be like, no, I don't think you should get your fair share because you signed this contract 3 years ago. It's like I completely agree with you. How could you have possibly predicted that you were going to be in this position 3 years down the line where all of a sudden the Club World Cup makes this huge expansion and it throws a ton of money into it, whereas 3 years ago the Club World Cup was basically nothing. It was tiny. It was, basically just another trophy for the European clubs to just add to their cabinet and move on. Nobody was really getting any significant money out of it. And now it's like a completely different scenario. And it's like it's just frustrating. Like, especially, I need to go back to the owner thing. This is the thing I was close to jumping over before, but
Okay.
I held myself back. But
Yep.
it's so frustrating to hear stuff like that. I mean, you're talking about someone who owns a team. So I couldn't find any specific numbers, but I think it's fair to assume that this person probably has, at a minimum, tens of millions of net worth. If not probably way more than that. I mean, some of these owners in the league have billions in net worth. Like undescribable amounts of generational wealth that just completely overdone. Meanwhile, one of their best center backs right now on the roster, Jackson Reagan, had a guaranteed compensation of $108,000 last season. And you can't spare him a little bit more money to help you like you perform well in the CONCACAF Champions Cup? I mean, I could use any other example from anybody else on this team. I'm sure majority of them are making less than a million, which don't get me wrong, a couple $100,000 is still great money, 100%. But compared to your multi-million dollar, billion dollar owners collecting majority of this paycheck, even though you're the players that got them there, I think that's super shameful.
I completely agree. However, I do need to point out the fact that the only thing that came to my head when you were talking there was the meme of that guy being like, "Hello, my fellow youth." When you mentioned something along the lines of like, "Oh yeah, all these people are just all the same." It feels very human, you know. It's like, oh, "Hello, my fellow youth." Um,
Hello, my fellow human.
yes, yeah, no, you're spot on, right? And that ties that's another theme in this episode together is the fact that owners are worth way more than like it baffles me to think, but like this $10 million, right? If you're an ownership group of 5 people, right? I think that's what Seattle's at. Seattle's got 5. And you split it, let's say they split it, I know they wouldn't, but let's say they split it evenly, $2 million to each person. Guys, that's a tax write-off. Like they drop that on the side of the road and they don't care. It baffles me how and that's kind of this whole mindset of like, yeah, you definitely can find a way to get this better. And what bothers me is this idea, and again, I don't know how true it is, right? There's only been one side of the story that's come out. But what I've been, when Seattle comes out and says, "Oh, we've been trying to talk to them for weeks and nothing's happened. They haven't even answered us." Then I saw something come out from, an undisclosed source says, "No, no, no, we've been talking to them. Things have been progressing. We just haven't gotten anywhere yet." Regardless of which way it is, the fact that they couldn't make it public saying, "Hey, we're going to try and figure this out," that's great PR, right? Oh, yeah, look, we're looking after our players. We're trying to figure this out because this obviously is a problem. But instead, they're hiding it and trying to make it sound like, "Oh, yeah, don't worry about it. Nothing, we'll solve it later." It just feels like a weird dynamic there for sure. But to those saying that these guys are being selfish because they should speak out against Leagues Cup, right? Why didn't you speak out against Leagues Cup? That was also a cash grab. Touch grass, right? Seattle specifically had many, many players come out speaking out in favor of U.S. Open Cup during this Leagues Cup thing. I specifically remember Jordan Morris and Christian Roldan both being like, "Yeah, we like the U.S. Open Cup. We would love to play in that as well. We don't hate Leagues Cup because it's also fun and unique and different, but we like USOC too. We want to play in both of them, right?" But it wasn't their choice. Like the players didn't choose to pull out of Leagues Cup for U.S. Open Cup. So this is a moot point, right? But now they're being made to play these games on top of their schedule, and they're not getting compensated for it, right? Leagues Cup was different because you pulled out of one, you went into the other, and you got paid probably more for the bonus of Leagues Cup than you would anywhere else. Now you have the opportunity to get a bigger bonus, and they're saying no, right? Similar but different, in my opinion. All they're asking for is fair compensation. And anyone who thinks that it's wrong to promote yourself to be compensated fairly in a job that you do, reevaluate your life choices because that is such a weird thing to think about. I don't understand it at all.
Yeah, I mean, unless you are like a family member of the Seattle ownership group, how does this make any sense? Why would
That
you
that's
be like
that
defend
that is supposed to be my fifth car. Why would you give that away?
that?
That's my vacation
Sorry,
home in
Jackson Reagan.
Hawaii.
It one more year on 100,000. I got to make sure that I can pay for my next Range Rover.